Ready to do it?
Yeah, let's go.
Right.
Just so before you start, I've noticed that when the video chops out, the audio still is fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we don't worry about it.
Okay. All right, we are on another episode of Pass the Torch podcast. Tonight we have Annie FlamSteed, who is 22 years old and is an inspiration to many. As the founder and CEO of Inspire by Annie, she spends every minute of every day developing new programs and content to improve the mental, emotional, physical well-being of children and adolescents. Her highly innovative online platform and mobile app, powered by My Springday, engages young people globally in health education and teaches them how to live healthier and happier lives. After struggling herself with anxiety as a teenager, Annie truly understands the magnitude of the worldwide epidemic of youth mental health and is determined to make a change. Annie, welcome to Pass the Torch podcast.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Absolutely. The first question that I ask, I think the picture went out, but that's okay. We're still gonna roll with it. Um,
Oh, sorry.
no, you're good. You're good. First question I always ask every guest is, what is your why for getting involved in entrepreneurship and going on your journey with being the CEO of Inspire?
Well, it's a really interesting question because I guess the initial reason why I started is very different to why I'm continuing to do it now. So I believe when I started my business, I was 17, and I was like, okay, like there's this huge problem with adolescent well-being, and as you mentioned, like I myself was struggling with some anxieties and stuff. And at the same time, I was a really high-level competitive gymnast, so it didn't really make sense to me to sort of feel anxious but be this really top-end level athlete. So initially, when I started my business, it was purely just to help other young people to understand their anxieties and their well-being issues, and then to work on it. I guess now why I do it is a little bit different. Like I really, really love entrepreneurship, and I love business, and I love the hard days and the knockbacks that make you then be able to be better at your job and what you're doing. So there's a couple of reasons why, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. What time did that start for you? When you were in high school? After that, or when did this journey begin? Where you said, "I have to bring this into existence"?
Um, yeah, I think it was definitely about grade 11 or 12. I was going through all the normal stuff that teenage girls go through. And at the same time, I was training about 35 to 38 hours a week as a gymnast. So
Wow.
I sort of, in high school, had to really quickly learn how to be disciplined and time manage. And so then when I left school, I sort of was like, well, what do I do with my time now? I may as well start a business.
No, absolutely. So you
Yeah.
you started this organization while you were in high school still.
Yeah, sort of about a month after finishing high school, like in over here in Australia, we go to this thing called schoolies, which is like a week at the beach. We have this big party, and when I got home from that, I was still training quite competitively and competed for one more year on the national circuit as a gymnast. And then it was sort of in that year, so the year after school, like in Australia, we finished school when we were 17. So I had a full year before I turned 18, so I started all the planning and all the brainstorming and I guess goal setting in that final year after school, and then really started to action it when I finished school.
That's incredible. So how did your friends react to you taking on a venture like that? That's not just a school project. That's something that's very big. It's very serious, and it takes a lot of energy on top of your studies. How do you handle that? How did your friends around you handle that?
Um, I think like my friends, they're so amazing. They just think I'm a little crazy. Like I was, the kid that was always just training all the time and
Yeah.
doing every sport that you could possibly imagine. So I think, when I left school and said, oh guys, I'm going to keep training and go to uni full time and then start this business, they were all like, okay, that seems like a normal thing for Annie to do. And then I guess they just then focused on, I guess, supporting me through it and sort of encouraging me to keep doing it. So I have a lot of friends that are quite ambitious as well. So that was really helpful, to have those people around you doing similar things.
Absolutely. So you were doing gymnastics during the time, one of the most, I would say, challenging athletic sports out there. How did that impact you in being the CEO of Inspire? How did that help you? How did it hinder you, if at all?
Yeah, look, I mean, to be honest, like the first year of starting my business was very slow. Like I had no idea what I was doing. And I guess there's a few positives and negatives to being like a really competitive athlete.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you ask any athlete, that they'll say the same thing. Like obviously, probably be a CEO now if I didn't do competitive sport. Like you have to learn how to time manage and sort of set your own goals and achieve them. But at the same time, with elite sport comes a lot of sacrifices and a lot of, I guess, you have a lot of pressure on yourself and a lot of anxiety from a very young age to perform at a really high level. So I think that's one of the things that I'm really trying to work on. Whilst it's a positive to put that pressure on yourself and strive to be really successful, it can also cause quite a fair bit of anxiety and stress when you're constantly striving to be better and better and better each day. So starting my business whilst I was training was a difficult thing to manage, but I think now that I'm not training and I'm just running the business, I've definitely got an appreciation for, how to utilize that time to be successful in one thing rather than two or three.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've run a startup as well, Mentorch, and I absolutely understand where you're coming from. I'm actually still
Yeah.
in the military, and I do this at night or on the weekends after my day job, so I understand completely what it's like to have to take a lot of time, but also make sure you're doing your day job, you're doing your schoolwork, and then on the other side, still literally growing this baby, which is
Yeah.
a company.
Yeah. And then I think that, like, the whole startup scene is, I'm hoping to get over to the States later this year to do a bit of a product launch with our athlete version of my online system. But, in Australia, the startup scene is really, really developing quickly. I'm from Brisbane and we're apparently the startup capital of Australia, or we're really pushing to be. And our Lord Mayor has this big focus on, being digital Brisbane. So there's a lot going on in that startup scene, but I think it's easy to forget when my friends think, oh, Annie runs this big company, she's so successful, but at the same time, when you have a startup, you have to work still. I'm still studying full time, and trying to fit all of that in. Plus, spending time with your friends and family can be quite difficult.
Yeah.
You really, really, as you said, have to be passionate about it and have to really, really want that startup or that baby, as you call it, to be successful. Otherwise, it's just difficult.
No, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the anxiety, because you talked about that being an athlete. Absolutely understand that piece as well. I played football, cross country, all that stuff in high school. I definitely have nothing but respect for gymnasts, because I'm like, the things that I see you have to put yourself through, whether male or female, is absolutely incredible. And that pressure is just almost insurmountable at sometimes. So I guess what was your experience doing that, and how did that lead you to say, okay, now I'm going to start this company and help others now, and how does that prepare you to do that?
Well, to be honest, so in the Australian gymnastics stream, we've got international stream and national stream. Now they're combined into one, I believe, but when I was training, there was the two separate streams. So I was in the national stream, and it's really interesting because you're still training, between 20 and 35 hours a week.
Wow.
But if you're in the international stream, you do different school a lot of the time. So you might do grade 10, 11, 12 over 11 and 12 over 3 years and spread it out a bit. But for us in the national stream, and I was from a small town outside of Brisbane called Toowoomba, which is a little bit of like a country, not really country, but a bit west of Brisbane. And so I guess when the anxiety started was really that I was striving to be this really top level athlete, but still living a very normal, 15, 16, 17-year-olds lifestyle where my friends were going to parties and doing normal schoolwork. So I guess for me, when I really noticed that I was struggling a bit with anxiety, it was all around perfectionism and performance. And I guess it's really interesting because, like, as you know, probably from talking to me or looking at my socials, like, I'm a really outgoing, confident, seeming to be like really self-motivated type of person. So
Absolutely.
the reason that I started this business was because on the forefront, and I guess on face value, I'm just like unstoppable, and everybody thinks, she's popular, she's got great friends, she's got great family, she's an athlete, now she runs a business. And the reason I wanted to help young people through my business and create these programs is because it became really apparent to me that you can seem to be well put together, but you may be struggling a lot with anxiety or mental health. And I think that's really what keeps me going every day with this business, is that no matter how amazing someone looks on social media or even just in an interview, they may still have their own struggles. And I think if we can teach young kids that, then give them the tools to manage, I think that would just be so powerful.
Absolutely. I think social media right now, I love it. Okay, like we definitely
Mm,
understand the tool and the utility behind it. It's great for connecting, but there's this highlight reel that
yeah.
especially when younger people are seeing that, and they might not understand the difference that, okay, this person's posting amazing pictures on Instagram, or this person's posting great things on Facebook, and all of it's positive, and you're living a real life, and you're like, I'm going through X, Y, and Z, or someone I care about is going through X, Y, and Z that's negative. And when you do that comparison game, it's not a good result for you at all. And then it leads to your depression.
Yeah, and I think, like, it's really interesting because as a young adult, and sort of, my sister's 26 and my brother's 29, and they even have a different perception to social media than I do, and we're only a few years apart.
Yeah.
And I think when I look at the kids that I mentor through my programs and that I speak to when I'm doing a business launch at their school or their sporting club, they're so engrossed in social media, what people think of them, how many likes they're getting. And I find myself constantly saying, like, yeah, social media is great. I use it, you use it, it's an awesome thing. But if it controls your life, and if you're sitting there looking at photos going, why is my life not like that? Why does she look so perfect all the time? These kids have lack the ability 100% to even go, well, maybe that's 5 minutes of their day. The rest of
Yeah.
their day probably doesn't look like that.
Yeah.
But it's just, if you see that on their highlight reel, you're like, why is my life not like that? And that's where I think this vicious cycle starts, because from there, you then post a photo to try and get reassurance from other people that your life is actually great.
Absolutely.
But without that reassurance, you lack your self-assurance. You can't reassure yourself that you're fine. And I think that's the biggest problem.
No, I love that. So I kind of want to dive a little bit deeper and talk about some of
Mhm.
the programs that Inspire runs, and maybe even some of the content that you use to enable people to see all aspects and perspectives of how life is actually lived.
Mm. So, like, if we rewind, when I first started my business, it was just going to be personal training. And I just, like every other young personal trainer out there, was going to change the world one person at a time. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, that's great, but it is really difficult to do that from one place.
Yeah.
There are millions and billions of people that you could help. And trying to run a stock standard personal training business, whether it be outdoors or in a gym, is really difficult. And I noticed that I started to attract this really specific demographic of sort of like 15 to 25-year-old boys and girls.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is surely not just because they like hanging out with me. Like, maybe there's a niche market here. Like, they're obviously not getting what they want from either online programs or other gyms. And so I sat down with my dad, who I'll probably talk a little bit later about him. He's been a huge mentor of mine. And I said, how can I actually get to these kids, right? So if I'm attracting 15-year-old to 25-year-olds, surely people younger than that need this guidance and this advice. So I was like, I need to figure out a way to write programs and content that teach children and adolescents about well-being, and that's physical, emotional, and mental well-being.
Yeah.
So that by the time they're 25 to 40, they're not having to go and fix all of these bad habits or lifestyle habits that they've got. They just have the skills to go and live a healthy life. And I sort of, ummed and ahed about it, and there was a lot of roadblocks. When you're doing a business plan and you're like, what's going to stop me from being successful? And I guess one thing was that these kids don't have any money, and the second thing was that they can't drive there. So unless their parents are really believers of my business and my programs, we have to find a way to get this online. We have to find a way to reach these children within their schools or their sporting clubs, and then make it accessible to them via a device.
Absolutely.
So I guess from there I just started. I started working with a lot of mentors. Actually, Troy Morgan is one of them. He had an online business for corporates, an online program for corporates, and he also had a face-to-face gym. But he introduced me to this prospect of working on sleep, mood, energy, and stress. And if you can work on those 4 things, then, you know, and you have the tools to manage those 4 things, then your overall health is going to improve. What we call or programs that were in 4 to 8 week blocks that dealt with things like mental toughness, anxiety management, mood control, and then obviously your more surface level ones like exercise and nutrition. But I tried to ensure that the whole focus for my business was on how these young people feel and how I can improve how they feel as opposed to how they look. So you'll never see any of our marketing or any of our promos talking about do my program and you'll look like this, or wear, drink this protein and you'll look like this, because I think that's where a lot of the issues start. The focus in the health industry is all about how people look. So without, I guess, talking for too long with that another question,
you're great.
I get so carried away, but I think it's really the whole focus of my business, whether we're working with athletes or children or teenagers or parents, is to help them focus on how they feel and then take the steps necessary to improve how they feel. Because if you feel great, you're going to look great, right?
Absolutely. So I'm trying to go through the program. Is it? I'm working with you, and you're mentoring me, and we're working through the program. Am I able to interact with a bunch of other people? We come together and we go through this experience together.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently we follow like a business to business model. So we'll go to a school or a sporting club or an organization and roll out our programs and our online platform and app to a group of athletes or students. So they all get points for engaging in our system, and they go on a leaderboard and they can sort of communicate and verse each other. And then further than that, we have what we call our open leaderboard. So they can actually see everybody who's engaging in our content and programs, how many points they're getting. They can upload photos onto our platform and interact with each other. So we're really trying to create like that online hub that is a safe place for children and adolescents to talk about well-being, be educated about well-being, and I guess engage in well-being, as opposed to having to post it all the time on an open social media platform.
Yeah, I think that it's huge. Just what we were talking about in social media. A program like Inspire allows people really to truly see they're not the only people who are hurting. They're not alone. Other people, you're almost destigmatizing it.
Exactly. And I think, for me with my own, anxieties, and I know I talk about that very broadly, as in anxiety as a very broad term, but we'll say, my stresses and my anxieties and my own self-doubt that I still deal with.
Yeah.
I think when I was about 18 or 19, there was this elite gymnast who was in the international stream, and I just thought she was amazing, and she was. But one day she sat down with me and said, Annie, it's normal to feel like that. Like, I have anxiety, I can't sleep sometimes. I don't want to go to training sometimes. And as soon as I heard that she'd gone through that, I was like, my God, this is so much easier, right? It shouldn't be easier, but it is, because it's normal. And I don't think we need to normalize mental health issues, but things like anxiety or feelings of stress or concern or self-doubt, that is very normal,
Right. Absolutely. The stigma needs to go away. Otherwise, people are never actually going to reach out there and get the help. And I have friends in my circle who maybe they know I've been watching, maybe they don't, but they're becoming more verbal and really sparking the conversation around it. And what I've noticed is other friends in their circle, in my circle as well, they start commenting on that, and then it actually sparks a conversation. Whereas before, everyone was suffering in silence and alone. So I think it's incredibly awesome that you're doing this. It's needed, because if people like you don't step up and talk about it, and I've even talked about it in past podcasts as well myself, but it'll forever be this taboo subject that never actually is brought out in the open.
Yeah, and I think something that's really powerful, and one of my mentors actually told me this. She's like, if you didn't have a certain level of anxiety or stress going on in your life, you wouldn't be able to be successful. Like, it can be this really awful thing that really negatively affects your life, but it also can be something that drives you and that pushes you to be successful. It almost keeps you on your toes. And if we can sort of start, anxiety and depression and things are they're just an illness, right? But I don't even think they're an illness. They're just a thing that we all have levels of anxiety. We all have levels of sadness at some point in our life, and it's about being able to recognize that and then try and do something positive with it. So I'm really slowly learning myself that if I'm having one of those moments of absolute panic, where you're like, oh my gosh, I've got these deadlines, I've got this, I've got a sales pitch tomorrow, I've got uni to do.
Yeah.
My friends are gonna think I'm, slack because I can never see them. I never talk to my parents, rah rah. When I have those feelings, I'm like, yeah, but why is that? What's it doing for me? And how can I use this to be successful? Or if there are things that are being affected by my work and my lifestyle, can I actually change some of those things now to improve those things? And if not, then you just sort of have to ride it, and try and make the most of it.
Absolutely. Well said. Um, just seeing how driven you are and motivated and just hardworking. You kind of alluded to it before, but I definitely want to ask you about the mentors in your life and how they
Yeah.
impacted you on your journey in the beginning and today.
So I have lots of mentors, and they seem to be growing. Like and you're probably learning this right now with your startup, but there's a difference between a board of advisors and a board of directors, and I think that my board of advisors is just massive right now, and it's incredible. Sort of before I go into who my main mentors are, I think for anybody that is listening who's in a startup or studying a really difficult degree or an athlete or something or anything really, it's interesting how willing people are to mentor you and to help you if you just ask them. Like if you just let your guard down and say, I remember this one typical, this incredible entrepreneur came and did this big sort of live demo talk for us. And at the end, I just went up to him and everybody else was going, I run this really successful startup. We've got 20,000, blah, blah, blah. We've got this, we've got this.
Yeah.
Like they were all just sort of making this stuff up to try and impress him and get him to mentor them. So I just went up to him and said, look, I've got this idea. We've got proof of concept. We've got market traction. But I have no idea how to pitch for investment. I have no idea how to do a product launch. Yeah. Can you teach me? And he was like, absolutely. And he called me the next day. Like I didn't even have to call him. And he said it was just because he gets so many startups that go, we know everything. You can't teach us anything, but we want you to try and teach us everything so we can say you're teaching us stuff, So I think it's if you just say you need help, people will be like, yeah, sure, I'll help you. So, I mean, I guess I could mention all of them, but my main mentors would definitely be my mum and dad. Sounds really corny, but they run two massive companies. My dad's in earth moving and mining equipment, sales and service, and my mum runs a big gymnastics center. And it's interesting, like they don't run software businesses like I do, but they have worked so hard for so many years. Like I just remember this incredible work-life balance they had. Like they were always away, they were always working, but every school event, every gymnastics competition, every birthday, they were there somehow. They just had this incredible balance of managing their time and building these empires at the same time. And so individually as well. Like my mum was never a stay-at-home mum, and my dad was never the main sort of, I guess, earner for our family. They were both on this path of having successful companies. And for me and my siblings, that was just like, oh, well, if they can do it, we can do it. And it sort of just set the standard for us, like how much can we jam pack into one day, 1 year, one lifetime? And how can that deliver a really incredible lifestyle for our kids when we have kids? So I think they're my main mentors. I mean, second to that, and I think I really should should mention, and I hope she's listening. Georgie Drury, she's the CEO of My Springday, which I'm sure you read in my bio. So
Yep.
My Springday is a software company based in Sydney, which is about a 2-hour flight from where I live. And they're a cloud-based wellbeing company. So they build platforms for corporate companies and other organizations now. She's just killing it. That integrate all these different levels of well-being into one platform, so that corporations, big ones like, we're talking Virgin and these massive companies,
Wow.
can use one platform to integrate with their staff, do well-being challenges, and offer this really exceptional level of well-being to them. And essentially over the years, we've become really close, and her company has actually built my platform for me. So we're partners in this whole journey, and she mentors me, weekly. She's flying all around the world and all around the country, and she still finds, 20 minutes to an hour every week to talk to me. And it's not always, she's not always fluffy, you're amazing, Annie. She will tell me what I need to do to get this off the ground. And I think that is the best kind of mentor. Like I could call her and celebrate with her that we've got it. When we got our first sale, she was the first person I called.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I could call her when everything is going bad and say, Georgie, what did you do? Or what? And I sent her an email last week. What would you tell your 22-year-old self? And she hit me straight back with this massive, incredible amount of really upfront advice. And that's a great mentor. That no bullshit, just straight to the point, but also very supportive. So she's a great mentor of mine at the moment, and I can't wait to see where she takes her business. Like, it was a startup as well. And so she's a startup now working with other startups, and I just think that is so encouraging.
No, it's huge. I love what you said about your parents. Just being able to watch them build and be examples, even if you're not, saying, okay, this is everything you need to do. Just being able to watch and witness that is absolutely huge, and it makes a big difference. And then being able to work with someone like Georgie, it gives me chills, because I've been fortunate to be able to work with mentors like that, and people who are busy, who are doing their own thing, but they still, at the end of the day, take time to just find out how the heck you're doing, say what's going on in your life,
Yeah.
and offer you advice. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, my parents, it's incredible mentorship, like as a kid, you don't even understand it, right? Your teachers are your mentors, your families are your mentors, but you're like, oh, they're always telling me what to do. Like, you see it as a really negative thing.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. Like, what I've noticed is that, right, my parents mentored my oldest brother, and he's a rock star who now has his own company as well. He's traveled all around the States and worked with Ben Majera of Jackass, and he's just had this incredible lifestyle. They mentored him, and he now mentors me in some capacity. He mentors me about, I guess, just going out, doing whatever you want, and
Yeah.
striving for that optimum lifestyle, whether that is a rock star or a business owner, doesn't matter. Then he mentored my sister, who's the middle child, and she's a teacher. She went to uni, did this incredible degree, and now she's mentoring kids, right? And she mentors me in a different capacity about organization and staying true to yourself, and holding your line, and working really, really hard to better other people's lives. And now I'm using all of that mentorship to mentor other young people, I hope. And it's contagious. I feel like if you can just open your mind and let in that mentorship, what you can pass on to others is just so, so massive. Like, everything that I give to other kids or people when I mentor them comes from somebody else. It's not rocket science, but you have to learn from someone else to be able to teach to someone else.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Each one teach one. For Mentorch, we say seek knowledge and pass the torch, and then our leave a legacy is right in our logo. I absolutely love that. And just looking inside your family and seeing your brother and your sisters and how you're mentoring other people, that's exactly how it's supposed to work. And it's a flame, and it's a flame that can continue to be nurtured and passed on. So that's just incredible. Cool. I'm gonna dive in more. So if someone's like, Annie, I think you're awesome. They love what you're doing, and they're like, I would love for you to be my mentor, guy or girl, or if you have a preference, or you're leaning more to nurture a different demographic, let us know. But if they said, Annie, we would love for you to be our mentor, what would you tell them? What would your expectations for that relationship be for you to agree to that?
I have, I guess, like three main points that I would put down straight up.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one would be that if you, and I'm assuming it would be sort of business mentoring, or I get a lot of young athletes wanting to be mentored by me. And I guess the first one would be that it's not always going to be easy. Like there are going to be things that I tell you that you're going to say, Annie, that is so easy for you to say. And I know that that's going to be difficult. So I guess the first thing would be like, as long as you're willing to understand that there are going to be hard times and times that are not as idyllic as you'd want them to, then that's great. The second one would be to be open-minded. Like, I'm a little crazy. Like, I will try and jam-pack so many things into one meeting or 1 hour or one day. But I think that's really where, for lack of a better term, inspiration begins, right? Like, if you just go through every day just doing stuff and just doing the same thing over and over, then you're going to get the same outcomes. So
Absolutely.
If they're willing to jump in and just go for it, then that's probably a second thing they're going to have to do. And then the third one, I guess I want them to be willing to mentor me at the same time. So my business is built off three things, and that's educate, support, and inspire. So, the way I like to explain it to young people or old people is that education's great, right? It teaches you how to be successful. And if you have education, if you have a textbook, or if you have the whatever, you have the education in some way, then you all of a sudden you know how to succeed. But you need something else, right? So you need support. So then you give support, or you get support from somewhere else, and then you are able to succeed. So you've got education, you know how to succeed, you get support. Now you're sort of able to succeed because you've got the right things in place, the right people around you. But the third thing that you need is inspiration. You need to be able to, you need to have inspiration from someone. So as a mentor, I need to be able to educate people, support people, then inspire them. But as a mentee, so like as someone that's working with me, they need to be able to take that education, take that support, and then also inspire me to continue working with them. So do something with that education, do something with that support, and teach me, I guess, when I say they need to be able to mentor me, I mean, teach me really honestly what it is that they need, so that I can then give that to them, right? Because if they're just like, yeah, Annie, you're amazing, it's probably not going to get them the best results.
Yeah.
If they say, like, that didn't work, I would prefer this, or I like this, then all of a sudden I just think this magic sort of mentor me, I'll mentor you relationship begins. And that's what I try to do when I'm a mentee. Like, when I'm being mentored, I try to challenge what they're telling me to do and challenge their thoughts and their opinions, and then I think it just opens this really incredible bubble of like, holy shit, let's make some progress for each other,
That's it. I love the last one, the inspire, and the mentee has to be able to teach you something, because the misconception is that you have the mentor and then you have the mentee, and the only thing that happens is the mentor is teaching the mentee, and there's no reversal of that process. But a lot of the time, I've learned a lot from not only Marines that I've worked with who are junior than me in rank. They've taught me an insane amount, sometimes more than even the people outrank me.
Yeah.
That's priceless, and you're spot on with that. You can learn a lot from people that even you might have an authority position over, or you might be the person who's supposed to be imparting the knowledge on them. But when you turn around, you've received just as much value or more from them in the first place.
And you know what's really interesting, just as you say that, like, I'm sure there's athletes listening to this, and there will be when, we'll share it, and hopefully they listen to it as well. But so I had this coach that coached me from when I was about, 9 years old, all the way to 19. So for 10 years, this coach spent upwards of, 20, and it was about 35 hours a week. Like, we would train 18 to 23 to 25 hours a week, but the other 10 came from things like rehab and before and after training sessions and the phone calls that we would have and the competition. So let's say I spent that 35 hours a week with my coach, right? She knew me and she spent more time with me than what my family did. So I had this interesting relationship with her, because I was not the easiest athlete to coach. Like, I was, I I'd sometimes be moody. I was a perfectionist. I was scared of things. I was very opinionated. Like, I was a typical athlete, right, I guess. And I was so driven, but so, I guess, anxious and scared at the same time. And, I've finished gym, 6 or 7 years ago now, 5 or 6 years ago. And for that whole 5-year period, I've still been working with her. She's the head coach at my mum's gym. And I always thought that she didn't like coaching me, like, because I was so difficult. And I became a coach myself and realized, oh my God, I would not want to coach myself as an athlete. Like, I would have put her through hell. And it was only a couple of weeks ago that I said to her, Vanessa, like, I put you through hell. Like, I was a really difficult athlete to coach. I would, because I would do this thing where I'd hit my routines 10 out of 10 times in training, then go to competition and fall like 5 times. And it would just be so frustrating for both her and myself. And you know what she said to me the other day? And I just had this incredible increase in respect. I was just tripled, because she said, you know what, Annie, what I say to people is that you taught me how to be a better coach. Like, you made me think outside the box. You made me think of new drills for you. You made me think of how I can better support you emotionally and physically. And she's like, I just see our 10-year relationship as coach and athlete as you teaching me how to be a better coach. And now when I coach kids, I'm a better coach. And I just walked away from that going, oh my God, here I am as her mentee. An athlete is a mentee of a coach, thinking that I made her life really difficult for 10 years and that she probably dreaded coaching me. But what she took from it, and because she is such an incredible coach and mentor, was that she thought, how can I get a positive out of this? And now she's sharing that with other kids. And it made me really emotional, actually, because I was thinking that it was so difficult for her to coach me, and it really made her life actually better. And that was just, she's incredible for being able to see that. I hope I can see things like that when I'm older.
Oh, I know you will. You're already well on your way to doing that. So I got a question for you, Annie. What is a key resource that you use that contributes to your success, that keeps you online? It might be a planner, program, an app, anything.
You know what? Like, this is so funny because I run a software business and everything that I do with my business is online.
Yeah.
But I use a good old, like, pen and paper. And I do this thing that one of my old mentors introduced to me. Like, I use, your classic, like, Google Calendar and that kind of stuff for actual meetings. But I just use a book and I separate it into, like, 4. So, like, a line down the middle, then a line horizontally. And I put my 4 priorities in there. So the first one is family and friends and relationships. The second one is my business. The third one is education. And the fourth one is inspiring. And when I say, like, inspiring, I don't mean inspire my business. I mean inspiring myself and inspiring others. And sort of, it's like inspiring / health, right? So they're the 4 things that are really important to me. And every day I try and make sure there's 3 things in each box that I'm going to do to better those 4 things. So for my friends and family, it might be call my grandma, call my sister, hang out with my boyfriend, whatever it might be. The second one is my business. So it'll be, what am I going to do today? It's going to better my business. Do I need to focus on sales? Do I need to focus on new content? Do I need to focus on raising some more funds so we can hire some more people? What are the 3 key things I can do? And then I guess the third one being, my education. Most of the time that's filled with university, but a lot of the time it might just be things like this. Like, I'm learning so much just from talking to you right now. So this was in my education box for today, for example.
I like it.
And then the fourth one, which is like inspiring and / my health. There's obviously also always exercise in there and mindfulness, but with inspiring, I try to just ensure that I've inspired somebody and that somebody's inspired me that day. And if I can do those 4 things, I go to bed every night feeling like, I may have, forgotten to eat my greens today, or, my makeup might not be perfect or whatever, but I've actioned those 4 key important aspects of my life. And if we can do that, it sort of compartmentalizes things and simplifies things a little bit. And it was my mentor, Paul Wyatt, that gave me that tool. And, I think with technology and everything that's out there, sometimes it's better to just switch off and use a pen and paper and see what that can do for you, or a big whiteboard or something. I see behind you, you've got that big whiteboard there, and I love that. It's just like a brain dump, right, on the wall. It's great.
I love that. I love that. It's yeah, definitely just coming back from all the technology and sitting there and writing with pen and paper. It's funny that you say that because even with Mentorch, vision boards are something kind of that you use. You cut up the magazine and stuff like that. We're trying to incorporate that into the technology, but yeah, sometimes it's just good to have a pen and paper and brain dump everything and organize it. And I love the method that you use. I'm gonna have to make sure I go back so I can write that in the show notes, so anyone who's listening to the podcast can kind of mimic that and mirror your progress as well. I think that's awesome. I am actually I said we were doing this live, which is one of the first times we've ever done this. So people have been joining the podcast, and I've kind of been silent. I haven't been welcome everybody to the podcast, but I just have a question. Al Shart's asking, and he's actually a friend from high school, so it's awesome to see him on here. But asking for aspiring entrepreneurs, he says, what has been your biggest setback with Inspire, and how did you overcome that?
My biggest setback was definitely my own mind. I just for years was like, oh my God, how am I going to compete with these people out there that have millions of followers or that are already so far advanced or have MBAs or have business degrees? It's been something that I've really had to sort of battle, and there are definitely times, Dad calls it where he calls like them Annie explosions, where I will just call and be like, I can't do this. I just want a 9-to-5 job, like I just want a 9-to-5 job where I go to work, someone tells me what to do, I get paid, and I go home. So I guess for me, I've been quite fortunate, being a young female entrepreneur in Australia, you're given a lot of opportunity. Like if they're really trying to push people like me to go out and do their own thing, particularly in software. So physical setbacks for me haven't really been the issue. It's definitely been myself and worrying what other people think, worrying about that financial security. Starting a business is quite scary. How I overcame that was I just had to think, what would I tell a 21-year-old that came to me with that problem? And it would most likely be, are you serious? Like, look at yourself. You can do this. Like, the worst thing that's going to happen is that you fail at it. Then you go get a job with someone else and you use all the skills you've learned to work really well in their company. So having that plan B, not so much a plan B because you think you're going to fail, but a plan B for those days where you have an Annie explosion and you just need to go, no, it's not the end of the world. Like, I can do this. That will be my backup, So I think that would be my advice. Like, it's physical roadblocks in entrepreneurship are going to be less likely to come up. You can always raise funds. You can always hire people. You can always get mentors. You can always work that little bit harder. But if you can overcome that mental battle, then you will be fine. You will be successful.
No, absolutely. There's this picture. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's like a guy who's mining, and he one guy quits right before he hits the diamond, and the other guy keeps going, and he gets the reward. And again, it's that mental setback. If you give up, you don't know how close you are to success.
Exactly. And I think that can translate over to anything in life, right? Like relationships or, I have a friend that's doing a really long distance relationship at the moment, and like they're on different continents, and she just is like, some days it's not worth it, but she has to be able to pull herself out of that because she wants it so badly and she can see how good the future is going to be. And I think if you can do it in business or you can do it in life, then you can really copy that to anywhere, anything that you're doing.
I agree wholeheartedly. Al also says thank you for that answer.
That's okay.
Okay, so the next question is, what is a poem, a quote, a short passage that you use that keeps your passion on fire?
Oh, there's so many. It's a really hard question because, like, I feel like there's a lot of quotes out there that are like your typical, business success quotes and everything like that. But I know this sounds really basic, but other than educate, support, inspire, like I use that with everything, like my own business, with mentoring others, with myself. Like and educate yourself, support yourself, and inspire yourself. That's like what I use all the time. But second to that, this is really funny, but I always say, and my phone screensaver is just slow down. And because the reason that I have slow down is because I'm trying to do everything. I'm trying to do everything a million miles an hour, and today's society is a million miles an hour. That sometimes we forget to slow down and do two things, and that is look at where you were a month ago or 6 months ago or a year ago. So slow down enough so you can appreciate that and see where you are. And then the second one is to slow down and embrace and enjoy where you are. Like, there are days where I'm like, oh my God, we need to raise this capital to push this business to the next level. Like, we're just about to push into the sports technology market, and we need to hire some really, really big experts in that field. So there's days where it's all I think about. How are we going to fund that? How are we going to push that? How are we going to ensure we're getting enough sales each week? So if I slow myself down and go, well, the fact that we're even trying to push into a new industry is incredible. Like, I think all of us change room and do that. So yeah, I know that sounds really basic, and I know that some people would get on here and give you these really inspiring, motivating quotes, but because I work with young people, I try to keep things simple, So if you slow down your mind, slow down what's going on, even if it's for 5 minutes a day, you'll be able to appreciate where you've been and embrace where you are, and then push to where you want to go.
No, that's brilliant advice. Like, some people, they're trying to go left, right, up, down, zigzag. They don't know what's going on, and if you just slow down, you can really see where you need to go. It's basic, but sometimes the most important advice is basic. Like, it doesn't have to be this complex, esoteric piece of advice. It can be very clear so that it can be communicated and absorbed, and people can execute on that. So I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the thing about slowing down is that it can mean something different to every single person.
Yeah.
Like, if you tell me 2 minutes to tell you that you joke, like, that's a hilarious joke. Like, I can't meditate to save myself. But for me, slowing down might be going for a run, right? Or going for a walk, or calling a friend, or writing a list of things down, So it means something different to everyone else. So when you think about mentoring, and to make it relevant to this podcast, I think everybody that's listening can slow down in some way, and to better themselves. So I think that's why I like that one the most.
Nothing but value. And you just gave really good advice, and I'm going to make it hard on you because I'm about to ask you to do the pass the torch portion. But we're going to do it anyway, and I know you're going to knock it out of the park. So, torch holders, we have arrived at the time in our program where Annie has 1 minute to pass the torch and leave a legacy. We all know that a mentor is a person who has achieved a level of success that we desire and can effectively guide us to success as well. Based on the success, Annie, that you've achieved at this point in your life, if you could pass the torch and leave a legacy message to your former self or anyone in a similar situation, how would you pass the torch in 1 hot minute?
Well, I'm doing like a pass the torch from what my dad said at my 21st birthday to me onto everybody else out there. So he said to me, Annie, you are smarter than you think, you are better than you think, and you can achieve more than you think. And if you can get over, what you actually think about yourself and get over those limiting beliefs, then you will do all of those things. So I guess what I want to pass on to other people is that everything you think, stop for a second, see if you would say that to your best friend or your sibling or somebody that's struggling. Would you tell them that negative thought you had about themselves? Would you tell them, no, you can't start this business because you don't have enough money or you don't have enough time? And if you wouldn't say it to someone else, then don't say it to yourself, right? You are smarter than you think, you are better than you think, and in this 21st century incredible world we live in, you honestly can actually do whatever the hell you want to do. You just have to go and do it.
I love it. Annie, for everyone out there who's listening, where can we find you? Where's the best place to connect with you?
So, my email address is probably the best at the moment, or my website has a link to my email address. So if maybe you could share that on here, and I'll send you the link to that.
Absolutely.
The other place is Instagram. if you look up Annie Flam, so just ANNIE.FLAM, or my business Instagram, which is just inspire.aus. So they can find me on there, and then, I mean, I'm happy to email them. Like, I do lots of Skype appointments and everything, so I'd love to be mentored from people and also mentor other people as well. So, yeah.
Awesome. Love it. You have just watched the first ever live episode of Pass the Torch podcast with Annie FlamSteed and Levante Santos, reminding you to seek knowledge and pass the torch. See you guys later.
Bye.
Perfect. Awesome.
Was
Whoa,
that okay?
that was fun. Yeah, that's the first time I so the video went out